What's going on, everybody? This is Jules with Gravel Kids. I'm coming to you from our local trail, which is the Comeet River Park Trail in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Today we're going to be taking a look at my Stump Jumper. This is my latest build. I built this bike maybe 3 or 4 months ago. It's pretty much done now. There's not much more left I can change on it. I want to go through, explain what I did, why I did what I did, and maybe I can save you guys some money, because there's some stuff in this bike that's pretty extreme. There's just things I want to try out personally, and there are some things that actually make a huge difference. So I want to talk to you about why you may or may not want to upgrade some bikes, some components, especially on a more entry-level mountain bike. Okay, let's get into the explanation and the reason behind some of the choices that I made. And I'm filming on 2 cameras, so you see me looking at two different spots. There's 2 different cameras around me, but let's take a look at the first thing, which is going to be the Noble wheels. The Specialized wheels that come on the more inexpensive bike, and supposedly some of the wheels that come on the even better bikes, aren't very well built. My plan originally was to take the parts that didn't want off this bike and use them to build a second bike for one of my kids. I didn't want to ride those Specialized wheels too hard and beat them up and break them and tear them up riding aggressive. So I took them off relatively early on. There's miles on them, but maybe 30 miles at the most, and nothing too crazy, because I didn't want to destroy them, because they have a reputation of being kind of finicky. Now, I could have went with some Hunt aluminum wheels or something to that effect, but I chose to go with carbon because I've never had a set of carbon wheels. It's something that I've always wanted. It's something I always wanted to try. And the benefit to going with the Noble wheels is there's a lifetime warranty. Even if the bike falls off the truck, it's drugged down the interstate, they will give you a discount on the actual wheel itself, even if it's not ride damaged. Now, if this wheel is cracked on a ride or doing something that you would normally do on a mountain bike, they will send a replacement wheel for you. And from what I hear, Noble is pretty good about the warranty. So how they say, buy it nice or buy it twice, this is definitely something that I want to buy once, spend the money the first time, and get a set that will last me essentially forever, because this wheel set will most likely be moved to another bike or another frame eventually. Hopefully, probably no time soon, because I kind of love this bike, the way it's set up. It's perfect for what I ride most of the time. I do have multiple bikes, but this is a bike I take out a lot. So that's why. As far as Industry 9 hubs go, again, it's a product I always want to try. Like I said earlier, Industry 9 hubs, they just have a reputation for being pretty good and sounding cool in the instant engagement, so it's actual performance with it. So what I would suggest, if you want to go with a better wheel versus the wheels that come on some more inexpensive bikes that tend to fall apart or aren't up to snuff, depending on how you ride. And what you'll see is a lot of stuff I'm talking about depends really on how you ride. If you don't ride too aggressive, you can buy the Ozark Trail from Walmart and go out and have a great time. Trust me, you don't have to spend $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 on the bike to go out and have a nice time. Especially you just pedaling around, you're hitting the trail with kids or just exercise, you're not doing nothing crazy. Trust me, I feel completely confident. Matter of fact, I ride this trail, even some more aggressive stuff on my gravel bike, I just pick different lines. I don't go hucking off stuff with my gravel bike. I will free ride some of the more drop heap type things, or where I can roll in, but I'm not gapping stuff and all on my gravel bike. But that being said, there's no suspension, carbon fiber front fork, 43 millimeter tires, and I can ride this whole park, even some of the more rooty areas, by just taking my time and using common sense. And a mountain bike, even the Ozark Trail from Walmart, will have more than enough tire and cushion to get the job done and be more comfortable than my gravel bike over rooted sections. So don't feel like you have to go out and spend $1 billion on a bicycle, because you don't, to have fun. But I'm the kind of person who likes to modify stuff. I do kind of ride more aggressive than the average person. So this bike build is personalized to me. So with that being said, you could probably go with some Hunt aluminum hubs for a couple $100, or wheels for a couple $100, and you don't have to go to Industry 9. You can go with something a lot cheaper. One Up makes a pretty cool hub set. If you want to add a pop of color, there's tons of anodized colors, and it's it's a great product. So again, you don't have to go as extreme as this with the Noble wheels, but just know these are lighter, they're stiffer. The bike out of the corner is more snappy. It goes where I point it, which you'll hear a lot of people say, like, you know, they're lightweight, you can maneuver them. You're moving less mass total to get where I'm trying to get to. And then you come from a set of inexpensive wheels on a entry-level bike like this bike was at one point in time. Those wheels even more heavy than, say, an upgraded set that came like maybe a good upper tier, mid-tier mountain bike. So I lost even more weight by going to the carbon wheels. So I have no regrets on getting the carbon wheels, but again, this is probably something I feel the least from. So you could probably be happy with aluminum wheels. You can maybe be happy with the wheels that came on it. You can ride them until they break and then replace them. You don't have to go this route, but just know, like an aluminum hunt wheel, so I think it's about 800 bucks. This set was about 1,600. And how many aluminum wheels could you potentially go through, depending on how you ride in a lifetime versus the warranty on those wheels. So, I mean, it quickly becomes a numbers game, and you kind of win going this route. So again, the lifetime warranty, you can't beat it. It's to the first person, the person that orders them. So I sold this bike, I'd have to do the replacement because they won't replace them for the next person who gets them. But anyway, again, like I said, these are wheels I plan on keeping. I don't plan on getting rid of them. All right, so while we're in the front, let's take a look at something that I drastically noticed a difference in, and that is the front fork. This bike from the factory came with a, what did it come with? I'll post a picture on the screen, but it came with a fork and it was a very entry-level fork. It didn't have a lot of the adjustments that this fork has. And you may think, do I need all these adjustments? And in truth, if you, like I said, if you ride like you got sense, you just want to get out, hit a trail, hit some gravel roads, you want something a little more comfortable and capable, Ozark trail bike or some cheapy bike, would definitely do it. But this one, however, is not the case. So the fork that came with this bike originally did not have all these adjustments, and I did notice it. It was one of the first things I noticed when I actually started riding this bike on the trail. The problem that I had was there's some portions, and if I get a chance, I'll put a picture on the screen, but there's some portions where you have to kind of ramp up and get over things. And when you lift the front end and push into the heel to get over it, the suspension will compress. And when it compressed, it will cause the bottom bracket, the chain ring, and the pedals essentially to smash into the ground because there was not enough support. And you couldn't get enough support in it without putting a ton of air in the shock. Well, when you put a ton of air in the shock, what that did, it made the ride way worse. So then you lost all small bump compliance because you're running a ton of air into a fork. So I could never really get the fork to feel good because when you run more air in the fork, it stiffens up the front end. And when you stiffen up the front end, that definitely affects handling, because what the shock does is when you hit bumps, it goes back down and pushes it back into the ground. So as the tire is tractions, you get traction when the wheel's on the ground. If the tires are popping off stuff like a solid fork, when you have to run a ton of air in it, you had less traction. And over some more of the technical areas, technical descents, rocky, rooty sections, especially going down, we have a couple of those here. It was not comfortable, and the front didn't want to wash out per se because the tires are fairly grippy, but I noticed they would ping off of stuff. Like the tires would ping and slide sideways because they weren't getting enough initial compliance to absorb the impact. So it was like taking something hard and pushing it off, you know, in that aspect or whatever. So yeah, so the fork made a huge difference. And it's one of those things where, again, you know, it's expensive. This fork is over $1,000. Brand, like I said, bought it brand new, put it in the bike, but this is one of the things you definitely feel. I mean, I can't explain it enough. Not that you have to go with the ultimate version, but there are things with the ultimate version that do, to me, make it a better riding fork. The buttercups, along with the carbon handlebars and tubeless setup, the chatter from gravel, small roots and stuff like that, and the fatigue you feel in the hands is greatly reduced because there's like little elastomer or rubber donuts that sit in here, rubber washers that sit in here. And then what happens at the first bit of compression, they compress those little rubber donuts, and that initial absorption gets picked up in here. Then you have the tubeless setup, and I run lower pressure because I run in tubeless. So the tires act as a shock. The elastomers act as a shock. The shock itself is functioning as a shock or a fork suspension. And then the carbon bars and all this equates to way less rattle in your hands. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is the Hayes Dominion brakes. These brakes are probably the best brakes you can get for the money, period, hands down. When it comes to pure stopping power, when it comes to the feel of the lever, the adjustments, and there is a reach adjustment here, and there's a bite point adjustment there. I didn't have to adjust the bite point adjustment. It's pretty much the lowest from the factory. That worked out perfectly fine. And I have adjusted this some, but that's all for personal feel. The set, I believe, might be 300 bucks a piece or something. I'll put a link in the description. But these brakes, when it comes to stopping power, they might not be the best looking, but they compete with the best for a quarter or a third of the price versus some of the high-end TRP Evos, trick stuff, things like that. These are hands down one of the best brakes you can get. So this is one of the things that was a value for the bike, but also extremely functional for the bike. Now, from the factory, this bike came with 2 piston calipers, front and rear, which is 1 piston on each side. When there's a section or a place here, and I'll post a picture of it, Bogachetta State Park, which has a fantastic crew of guys used to free ride with, that got with the government. They pumped millions of dollars into the place, and it's becoming one of the destinations. You'll see, if you haven't heard of it yet, you will, because it's a big deal. Backyard Trail Builders have done stuff there. They're gonna do more trail work, is about to be constructed soon. There's miles and miles of trail. There's drops. I'll try to post a picture of that. But when I'm running the Enduro lines with friends, and there's a train of us going down the trail, especially if one of them has to slow down, I quickly found out the factory brakes were not up to snuff to stop this bike when you're going down the trail. Not a crazy downhill, but a downhill enduro style trail. The brakes on here, again, were not enough to really stop this bike. It would stop you, but you had to squeeze them. You had to get on them. This is night and day difference. Complete game changer. The comfort that I have in these brakes, the reliability of these brakes, the functionality, the lever feel is less fatiguing because it's super light. Again, one of the best purchases. So if you're going to get better brakes, looking for better brakes, they do make a 2-piston version and a 4-piston version. They come in 3 colors: purple, bronze, or black. These again are the bronze ones, and I highly recommend them. Sure, you can get some brakes that are a little bit cheaper, but I promise you, these are one of the best upgrades on this whole bike. It's a safety thing. It's less fatiguing. Just trust me. You can't go wrong with the Hayes Dominion brakes. I'll drop a link to these too. Again, one of those things, if you are a person that rides like you have a lot of sense, you're not doing nothing crazy, you're going down hills, you're not chasing other people at speed, the brakes that come on this bike are completely sufficient. I think other even cable actuated disc brakes for a normal person is not doing anything crazy, it's sufficient. Or like a cable to hydraulic brake is even better. Hydraulics are fantastic. The price is relatively inexpensive. You can find hydraulic brakes. I recommend hydraulic, especially if your bike can be set up with it. But this is one of those parts as an investment that I do like, that I recommend is going with good brakes. It's just a safety thing. Okay, next we're going to talk about more on the cockpit itself. Again, and we'll do just a quick roundup. Too long, don't want to listen section at the end, but to the cockpit itself, this is the P&W long carbon bars. Again, not terribly expensive for the price. Fantastic build quality. I believe the warranty is pretty solid with them as well. They make them in aluminum or carbon. The aluminum is supposed to have some flex and some give too, but the idea is the carbon layup allows these to flex slightly up and down to absorb some of the impact or vibration from a trail, like I said, like trail chatter, but they're meant to be stiff. I guess you call that laterally, so you can still whip the bike. Again, I haven't noticed, because I mean, I've had them all in there, but I have so much other stuff damping them. Do I recommend them? Hey, you can get them if you want. They're inexpensive. The thing I felt most about these bars, and the reason I don't plan on changing them, is just the overall geometry of them. The way the cockpit change is one of the biggest changes of this bike. The combination of the handlebars and the stem made the biggest difference in riding and handling to me. Huge, more so than the tires, the wheels. This made the bike mine. It made it feel more comfortable having the handlebars in this position, having the stem a little closer, made the bike slightly more compact, even though the bike is my size. It still has a ton of room. I don't feel congested when I'm riding. I have space to do what I need to do, but it feels more natural. The bike just feels like it fits better, and that's the importance of what happens like when you fit yourself to a bike. I can't understate this enough. You can get a bike from the store, you start riding it, you get used to it, but trust me, making these adjustments to the cockpit, making it your own, shortening the stem or lengthening the stem, taking the bars and rotating them, which can move the controllers forwards or backwards, the angle, your brakes and everything like that, makes a huge difference. The stem itself is 5-dev, so again, not cheap. You can get more inexpensive stems that are just as reliable, just as strong as the 5-dev. So this is because, I have a theme going on. I like the color. I like the design. I'm a nerd. I went to school for engineering, at one time. So I'm a big nerd into like technology and the CNC and all that kind of stuff. Do you need it? No. When I say do you need it, I'm talking about the 5-dev brand. But I highly recommend that you find a stem, or if you have friends that have stems you can try, or if there's a place you can buy stems or whatever to figure out the length that works for you. I would definitely recommend to change the stem. Even if you don't go 5-dev, go for some high quality machined stem. 100% recommend it. Handlebars the same way. If there's a place or a bike shop that has fitment and allows you to try different handlebars, you will see an amazing difference between the handlebars and the stem. Worlds different, night and day different, drastic different. Can't rave about it enough. Next on our list is going to be the race face grips. One reason I got these, besides the fact they were really highly recommended by a local bike shop who ran someone else's bike, but they also have the color I like and they're extremely grippy. I got a chance to put my hands on his before I bought them. Loved them, ordered them, no regrets, inexpensive. Another touch point, these are hugely different. This inexpensive part, whether you get a cheap one that you find that you like, that fits well, that you can grip, or whether you find an expensive one that you like that works well, that offers you grip, I highly recommend replacing your touch points because it makes a huge difference. And again, I can't show it through camera, but these things are tacky. They don't leave like residue on your hands, but you can almost hear it. It's almost like a grippy basketball. Like, it's crazy, but like I said, when you going on the trail, I live in Louisiana when it's hot. Normally I wear gloves, but even if you don't, even with sweaty hands, these are tacky enough where I feel confident. My hands are planted where I want them. So again, inexpensive part, completely worth the upgrade. Moving on to the next component, the 1-up tool. Now, if you don't want to carry a tool in your backpack or something with you, this 1-up tool is perfect. You can buy, and like again, it's one of those components where they make you buy it in sections. So this part you can get in various colors. And I have the one that's compact that screws in through the headset. Excuse me, through the headset. And a perk of that is that you don't have to tap the steerer tube on the fork. If you tap the steerer tube on your fork and you have to send it in, it will most likely void the warranty in most cases, as silly as that is, because you're not really tapping it far. Going with this method allows me to not have to tap the tube. It's one less tool I have to buy to do the job, and I essentially get most things I want. The only thing I can't pack with this setup is the chain breaker tool, which comes as an option you can get, is a chain breaker. So again, I showed it kind of earlier, and here is a fork, and there's some little bacon strips to plug a tubeless tire, which is what I run. There's a multi-tool, and there's a chain breaker. Has pretty much every Allen key or Torx that you would need to make adjustments or tighten headset or wheels or whatever. And it's also a master link on the other side of this. It's a magnet that holds a master link, so I have a master link in there too in case I need that. And if it's right neatly in the headset and or in the steerer tube, and it's great. You know, it's one of those things I'd rather have and not need, and need and not have. Again, the sucky part when it comes to one-up is everything is separate. This part is separate, a separate purchase. You can get various colors, so I guess that's cool. The tool itself, the top portion, is with everything that you see is one price, and then the flat repair with the bacon strips and the fork is the third part. So it's actually 3 separate pieces: the the tube repair with the bacon strips, the mount, and the tool. So that's 3 separate purchases. They basically nickel and diming you. There's other tools you can get, and on some of the nicer newer bikes they have it built in from the factory, but on this one, of course, being the lower model alloy stump jumper, it did not come with it. But again, it's one of those things I've had, I've used to help other people on the trail, or to adjust things, as I'm fitting things to the bike. I can adjust on the fly, pull over, make some adjustments, pop it back in, good to go. Another component on this bike is going to be the wolf tooth dropper post lever. And this replaced the factory one. I was able to use the same cable that came with the factory one and get this to work perfectly fine. The leverage on this is less than the factory, so it's a little bit easier to press than the factory one or whatever. The feel of it is substantially better. There's actually a texture to the lever, so even with gloves on, you can feel, you can get traction on it when you need to. So if you're going through something and all of a sudden you drop the seat, there you go. It's easy access. Again, a part that wasn't a ton of money. Everybody runs them, and for a reason. They're value for the money, and they do make a difference, especially like some of the other ones are sluggish, let the seat post up, or they kink the cable more, or this has actual bearing and it's a bigger barrel, so there's not as much of a kink in the cable, which is good for long-term reliability overall. And it's also adjustable. You can loosen these and move the lever like you want to, tighten it back down, and you can actually move the thumb in or out. So much more adjustable versus the factory one that came on the bike. So again, good little piece of kit, not terribly expensive. Is it something that you have to have? No. Does it make your life a little bit better on the trail? Yeah. So as far as, something that you would get early on, you can because it's cheap, but it's not something that you necessarily need to get. That's my opinion. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the rear shock. This again went on the same time. I ordered the front ultimate, rear super deluxe ultimate at the same time. It came with both cans, the larger negative air can and the more linear can. And again, you can see that this is the version that has the hydraulic bottom out. The travel on this bike is 130 in the rear, it's 150 in the front. It came 140, 130. I went 150, 130. What that did was that changed the geometry a little bit in the front, made it a little bit more slack. I ran in the high setting, so I raised the bottom bracket up because these bikes are notorious for slamming the bottom bracket, especially in the low setting. So the combination of both of those allowed me to raise the bottom bracket and my pedals up and get my geometry back towards a little more slack, a little more fun and comfortable on descents, and it still works perfectly fine as a trail bike. It's pretty much right now the ultimate trail bike to me. It's really hard to beat. But anyway, onto the rear shock. What I learned, the linear can on a Specialized Stump Jumper sucks, period. Sucks hugely. You need to go to the larger negative air chamber can. On the old bikes it would have been a magnet can, but on these it's a larger negative air chamber. This bulge you see, is a larger negative air chamber, and a lot of people say it feels like a mini Vivid when it's set up this way. And the reason you do this is because this bike is not very progressive. So progressive is the leverage on your shock. So some bikes, when they compress, the leverage, the ratio geometry of how this moves builds up. So the harder you push, the shorter the distance, so you get more travel. It's just, how can I explain it? So the less leverage you have, the more one-to-one it is. So when this moves with less leverage, it's almost that this is moving the same distance, right? But on this bike, it's not very progressive in the way that it moves. It's more linear. And on a linear bike, you want a more progressive suspension setup, and on a more progressive geometry design, you want a more linear shock. So when I ran this with the linear can, the back felt horrible. Like, it was hard to believe I spent that much money on the shock, which wasn't substantially better than the one I had on from the factory, which was a relatively inexpensive shock. The back head was harsh. When the sag was set appropriately, it rode extremely rough in the back. Now the fork has always been plush. Like the fork, like I said, with the combination of everything going on, even just the fork by itself before the carbon wheels was fantastic. It took very little finagling, and I can go over suspension setup if you want me to get the fork feeling fantastic. And I'll talk about the performance of the whole bike in a minute, as far as how all this stuff is set up. But trust me, when you have a linear bike like a Specialized Stump Jumper, this can is substantially better. Night and day difference. The bike woke up, it feels more comfortable, and what the negative air can does, the higher negative volume allows the back tire to start squishing or compressing easier. So before, you had to put more pressure on the back, or the bump would have to put more pressure on the back to get the back in and start moving to get into the shock stroke. With the negative can, you can think about it like negative pressure is almost like a vacuum. So by increasing negative pressure, it takes just that less to get the back to start moving through the suspension travel, which means you get the small bump compliance. So going over rocky and rooty sections, this can makes a huge difference because the shock starts to actually do what it needs to do way sooner versus the linear air can when the sag is set up correctly. More so than that, it's the low speed and high speed compression, which actually do make a difference, and it's got a rebound adjustment as well. This shock is fully loaded with the piggyback and hydraulic bottom out. So the low speed compression, as I said before, when I would go into those compressions, go up the hill and compress to get over it, and the bike hit that hill, it would drop way into the stroke on the factory shock and would bottom this out. Well, your high speed compression is what does that, because you go in at speed, you go to wheelie up and over and get over that hump. And like I'm saying hump, but they're this high or higher in some places here, and you have to push, and you'll come down a downhill, you go through like a little valley or a trench, and you got to pop up and over. Well, that was causing me to smash the bottom. Well, the high speed compression address most of that, because as you're going over that thing, when you hit that thing, that hill, that hump, the high speed compression kicks in, it slows the fluid down in it, and this bottom part's not soaking and just dropping into the hill and smashing up the chain ring and pedals and all that kind of stuff, which was extremely unsafe, because I almost got bucked a couple times because of that. So swapping to this setup with the high-speed compression here made a drastic difference, and you probably can't see it, but it's a set screw under the bottom. That's your high-speed compression on the RockShox Super Deluxe setup. Now, the low-speed compression is going to be like when you go into bank curves or things like that, where you kind of like more flowing into stuff. So what that did was allow me to adjust this, and this is more of a comfort thing, because as I'm going over like more flowy trails or whatever, that's when this compression kicks in, when it's more low speed or going into bank corners or whatever. And what that allows me to do is the mid stroke on these two, on the RockShox setup, is legendary, and it's for a reason. So when I'm going through a corner or flow trail, the low speed compression keeps me kind of like in the mid stroke. So the first part is giving me the comfort and the traction, and then I'll still have enough where I can push into it, and I still have enough support where I can push off and like pop off a little, like a double, a small little double, or a trail feature, or push out of a berm or something like that. That mid-stroke support is huge, and that's from the low-speed compression. Now the rebound adjust, most shocks will have rebound adjust, and again, if y'all want me to go over suspension and how you can set it up, I can do that or whatever. There's tons of videos, but I can break it down more. But the rebound adjustment is key too. A lot of your cheaper suspension will have rebound, but a lot of times it'll lack high speed, low speed compression. And trust me when I say these made a huge difference to the way I ride, because like I said, I would wheelie into stuff, just riding even at casual pace, not race speed, but at a decent pace to get over things. And it was just literally unsafe because it was hitting stuff. So I only rode with the factory suspension maybe twice. I went on vacation. I ordered these and they came in while I was on vacation. I had them installed at a bike shop. Here's one of the jobs I haven't done. Most of the work on this bike I do now, but hugely different. Do you need to go with the ultimate? Maybe, maybe not. It depends on how you ride, how you decide to set stuff up. They made the suspension on these forks extremely easy. There's just a few clicks, so it's not super overwhelming like say maybe like a Fox does. I do have a bike with Fox suspension as well, but this setup is super simple, and the clicks make a difference, especially with the Charger 3.1. I believe this one has 3.1 or 3.2. The clicks make a bigger difference. That was one of the, I think it's 3.2, because what they did was they made sure each click made even more difference than the other one. So you can tend to feel it, especially if you go out and just work on setting up the suspension, you can definitely feel it. So would I say suspension is a requirement? No. Again, if you ride something like this is just a gravel trail. A lot of the trail is hard packed like that. There's a lot of roots. As you can see, there's a lot of trees around here. There's rooty areas, there's rocky areas. It's not too crazy. This is not like North Shore or whatever. If you just want to get out here and ride and be comfortable and have a good time with your friends for cheap, like an Ozark Trail, Specialized Rock Hopper, hardtail, you know, will get you by. You'll have a blast, you'll have fun, you'll get exercise. You don't need to spend a ton of money on the bike. But when you start riding a little more, maybe not even aggressively, but as you start riding, there'll be some things that you feel or you notice. And so on that hill, if I didn't change the suspension, I could just ride more slowly on it. I could try to be more careful on it. I could try to keep my foot in a better placement on it. I could try to maybe go up a little slower and then roll into the hill and then try to pedal up the hill versus having momentum to go up and kind of get me halfway over the hill or start on the hill. I mean, you can compensate for it, but with the suspension, all that's done. Like, this is why you pay for the technology. Now, when I go ride other places, I keep the suspension almost set up the same, but I'll go and change my high-speed compression. I can add like another click of high-speed compression on the rear shock, and that's all I do. When I'm doing drops or something like that, I'll just take my Allen key out of my one-up, click one more on high-speed compression, pop that back in, and I'm ready to go. Then when I come here, click that high-speed compression off to get a little better, more compliant ride when I'm on my local trail. It is that easy. And if I decide to go someplace else, I know I have all the ability to set this up the way it needs to be set up and maintain traction and a safe ride. More on the back shock, the hydraulic bottom out feature. Again, this is a trail bike, but it's more like an all mountain bike build. The wheels are all mountain, the fork is all mountain, the shock is practically all mountain. But the benefits to this is the hydraulic bottom out. When you only have 130 millimeters of travel in the rear, the hydraulic bottom out makes a huge difference, because what happens is I'm often at the very top with hydraulic bottom out. When I typically come out here and ride and I'm jumping off of, like, you know, minor things or whatever, just riding kind of aggressive or at pace, I often blow through the travel, and I'm always typically running 30% sag to start off with. So I'm already 30% of my travel just for comfort and traction reasons. So then that gives me like roughly another 50% of actual usable travel. And then I can start getting to the hydraulic bottom out. And like this is about the last 25%. So I still have about 20-25% in reserve. And that last bit is even more progressive than the rest. So the negative air, the larger negative air can solve the problem with the linear geometric design or geometry design or kinematics, if you want to call it that. That fixed that part. And then the hydraulic bottom out allows me to ride a trail bike as an aggressive enduro bike, because I do enduro lines a lot. One of my favorite things to do is run enduro lines, and I can do the enduro lines on this bike at speed, even with the 130 millimeter shock, by just tweaking the high speed compression and knowing I have the hydraulic bottom out to save my butt. If I do go deep into the travel, it's not going to be as hard of a hit. There's actually bottom out bump stop in the shock, as well as the hydraulic bottom out, which in combination together fixes, like I said, it's just safer, fixes a lot of stuff. It's not a harsh hit if you ever do bottom out. So if you do go a little deep on this bike, for a trail bike, I'm not really worried. And again, it's the alloy frame, so I actually have the horse link set up in the rear versus the carbon. So one of the reasons I didn't want to go with the carbon, because the carbon doesn't have the actual horse link. It relies on these flexing, and I've seen people go off steps and crack these just riding off steps. Excuse me. So I prefer the alloy bike. It's only 3 pounds heavier, like for like, versus the carbon frame. And then this bike build now is significantly lighter than it was from the factory. The fork is more travel and lighter. The wheels are more capable and lighter. The shock is lighter. The bottom bracket is lighter. Overall, this bike shed a ton of weight, and it's just by adding better components. So moving on, let's talk about the cranks. Hey, these are my 5-dev cranks. The shrimmed up bottom bracket, the 5-dev chain ring, eagle chain. Now, this is controversial part of the whole deal. Not only are oval chain rings kind of controversial, I feel it allows me to climb a little bit better. I'm not a huge fan of climbing period, but this bike climbs like a freaking goat. And this chain ring, I feel comfortable with it. So the oval chain ring, and I don't plan on taking off. I don't see any downsides to it. And I believe when I'm climbing, it does allow me to put the power down more efficiently, being the oval. So again, that's a part, you know, that's controversial. Next thing up is going to be the 5-dev cranks. The 5-dev cranks are super expensive for cranks. Again, just nerding out with the CNC. They actually make parts that go into spaceships and space shuttles and rovers and stuff like that. 5-dev is from 5-Axis Design, which is a company's been out for a long time, and it's one of the top companies when it comes to CNC and engineering. And during COVID, when they were like breaks, the guys that own the company are huge bike riders, so they decided to start a business doing a few bike parts. It kind of took off. So this is what you get. A lot of times you can order these parts and there'll be a batch run. So you may have to wait like a week or two to get the part that you order, but that's because it's actually being machined. They do obviously ship them out to other stores and retailers or whatever, but I order straight from 5-dev. And again, you don't need these. Trust me, you can buy Race Face or other ones that are least expensive, or less expensive rather, just as capable, just as durable probably. I mean, these things are machined from a solid block of aluminum on their 5-axis machine. Like I said, they like the amount of detail like the bevel edges. There's no sharp parts to it. Like I said, it's all one piece. I know they make knockoffs, but no, these are the real deal. And let me show you something else. When they first came out, they tried to make this part thinner to reduce the overall height, right? So some of the first batches, when they did them, people started developing cracks or breaking here because when you land on something hard, especially downhill or doing something crazy, or you striking this part was thin, and then you had a few of them that failed in this area. That was one of the things they changed on the fly. This part's now thicker and more durable than the original 5-def cranks that came out. So some people say it costs a ton of money and they fall apart, but that was the first runs. These are more thicker. They add a little more metal to the bottom. It does make it a little thicker here, but again, it's not anything crazy. And these are the 165 length versus the 170s, I think that came on this bike originally, which is also done to help because my height, 165, it's probably a little bit better for my height. Second thing is it brings the cranks higher off the ground to reduce my pedal strikes. So the combination of the shorter cranks, the higher bracket, the better suspension, pedal strikes now don't often happen unless I'm just completely not paying attention. I would get bucked all the time when I first got this bike for the first few rides because I had to get used to how low it's set. But again, that is now a thing of the past. So if you see that people say, oh, they break, that's the older design. You'll see it's was thinner here. That is no longer the case. And again, they're made in the USA, and there's a serial number on them, so they can track down which batch, which machine. So again, top notch. I wouldn't change them. If I'm building another bike, would I buy in the set? Maybe not for the price. Maybe I try a race face or something else that's got like equally positive, equally strong reviews. And these are lighter than the ones that came off. This is like aluminum, like I say, CNC block of like aircraft aluminum, not just some recycled Coke cans. So these are stout parts. So even being that, they were still less than the steel cheapy NX or SX cranks that came on here. And the bottom bracket went to dub, which is significantly, I think it's 3 pounds lighter than the bottom bracket that came on it. So I lost a bunch of weight in this whole section, which was, it does make a difference, right? So there's that. The pedals, again, are just like cheap plastic pedals. They work, they hook up. As you can see, I've already bent this from strikes, probably early on, but they will be changed relatively soon. I'm just not sold on exactly which one I'm gonna go with. Eagle chain. So again, when I changed the crank and I changed the cassette, I changed the chain. Even though the other one's fairly new, this chain is a better quality chain, better components, and I try to maintain the chain that way. And it's the big small chain ring setup, which helps maintain keeping the chain ring on here without the need to have use the mounts to put a guard on it. So I've never had a chain issue, knock on wood. Moving on to the back, this cassette is significantly lighter, way lighter than the stamped steel part that came, I think was SX part. And this, I believe, is the XO1 part, so it's a lot lighter. Again, expensive. Do you need to go to expensive? No. Could you rock the one that came on the bike until it fell apart? Absolutely. Is it something that I regret buying? No. I think it looks cool. It's also lighter. I put a heavier tire on it, so it helps keep the balance of the bike in the back. The bike more balanced. As you see how it's sitting here like this, I didn't have to do much to get it to kind of balance compared to other bikes where I really have to like crank it because one is heavier than the other end. So, one of the things I'm taking in consideration is the balance, but more so the gear ratio, So only thing I may change is I may go to 2 more teeth on the chain ring versus this to get a better ratio. But, that's neither here nor there. The GX drivetrain. Now this, if you go GX axis and you just upgrade something that already exists on the bike. So if you have a GX, NX, SX, NX, GX, you can just get the kit. It's the derailleur and the shifter, and put it on the bike, set it up, and it should work without many issues. I like it. Just remember to charge the battery. I like all the functionality of it. Is it lighter versus the factory? I mean, you have to add a battery and a motor, and you remove cable. You get a little cleaner looking cockpit. You get adjustment on the fly by pressing this button, holding this button, and adjusting the paddle. I can make micro adjustments to the back, so if something happens and I feel like it's not shifting as quite like it should, I can make a micro adjustment here without a tool. So there's that. Reliability has been solid. Shifting's been solid. I have no complaints about it. Could you just get a GX derailleur and like an NX or SX set you already have and just put a GX derailleur on it? Certainly you could. You probably have better shifting. The shifter on the NX and SX is not as good as the GX. I believe the leverage and the way it feels is not as good, but again, you could get that set for way less than this. It's something, again, I wanted to try. My next bike or my other bikes, none of the other ones have this on it. My gravel bike is manual shifting as well. So I don't regret getting it. I'm not 100% sold if I'm gonna put it on another bike or not. As you can tell, I like tinkering stuff, so it's very possible that I will. But again, you can buy, and so this is the cool thing, right? Walmart, the two brothers that run Walmart in Bentonville, Arkansas. So if you know what Bentonville, Arkansas is like a mountain bike mecca in the United States. I wouldn't call it, I guess it's almost like our BC. I mean, it's not as extreme, right? But the popularity of it, you know it exists, you know what it is, you know the country, you know what Bentonville is. So a lot of that money that pumped into Bentonville is from, a lot has to do with the dudes that own Walmart or run Walmart, the family, the Waltons. Because they do that and are actual mountain bikers, a lot of bikes that Walmart sell aren't trash mountain bikes. Like there's the Ozark Trail line, which are fully upgradable, inexpensive mountain bike that you have that has a solid frame, with a solid starting point that you can come out and ride all these trails, have a blast, and you can start replacing stuff as it breaks. The derailleur hanger, the headset, all that stuff on those cheaper bikes for a couple $100, literally $200. Sometimes they go on sale for even less. All that's interchangeable. You could take this $1,000+ fork and stick on a $200 mountain bike from Walmart if you wanted to. And the crazy part, I just saw one on sale on Facebook Marketplace on a local group. I mean, $500 for the shock, and he was selling all the components brand new to convert it to the ultimate. So for $500, which again is almost twice the cost of that mountain bike, you can have a way more capable hardtail mountain bike. It's only a hardtail, right? So slap that on it and get out and have a blast. So $700, you have a mountain bike with a nice shock on it that you can adjust and go out and ride. And then when things start failing, you can just slap on like a SRAM GX derailleur and start working your way through the bike. You can put better tires on it, because tires make a huge difference to the ride. You can probably convert those bikes to be tubeless. I wouldn't be surprised if you couldn't. I mean, it may take a little bit of work, but I'm sure it can be done. So in conclusion, do you need a $9,000-$10,000 bike to go ride? You absolutely don't. Is there benefit to owning a bike that's this expensive? There absolutely is. Is there some components on here that I feel didn't do much? Certainly. Are there things on here I think that made a huge difference? Absolutely. Do I regret anything on this build? No. The cockpit, shortening that up, new handlebars, felt fantastic. Brakes make me more comfortable. I can plow through stuff. I can trust that I can stop. Rock solid, reliable. Love them. No issues, no leaky calibers on my set. Knock on wood, I have no issues. And the warranty from Hayes is pretty solid. I've had Hayes on some of my downhill bikes before, my free ride bikes, and loved them. So I got Hayes again. the Specialized tires. At first I didn't like the Butcher. The reason being though was the shock setup. It wasn't allowing the tire to come up. It was kind of like the tire was popping off at roots, and that was a combination of two things. That was one, the cockpit having me in a different way where I had less weight over the front tire, which allowed the front end of the bike to be a little lighter. Then the original factory shock, when you stiffened it up, almost acting like a rigid fork. So you had like a lightweight rigid fork and would cause the tire to skip over stuff. Now, with the cockpit and the front shock that it is now, I have a ton of traction on the front, even in soft terrain. I can rail this bike now because of the cockpit, puts me more forward over the bike, so I'm putting more weight. I'm in a better central position versus how it was set up before. And the shock now doing what a shock should do, a fork should do, and allowing the travel and allowing the bike to make traction and bite in. So right now, I mean, they're soft tires, but they freaking hook. I love them. And if something happens, maybe I'll change it to a Maxi just because, but I have no problem putting a Butcher back on the front of this bike again. Like I said, the shock, the rebound adjustment on it made this bike way safer to ride. Less compressions, less pedal strikes, which is actually kicking my feet off the pedals, going up and down things or whatever. So that was a safety thing. It's way more comfortable, way more capable bike now by changing the rear shock out. Worth it. The cranks, I went shorter. You need to spend $1 million to go shorter? No, you can get something else different. You can get, this gear was $100. The crank ring, the chain ring, $100, not terribly expensive, but you can get race face cranks and other cranks that are reliable, that have high ratings, that are safe, and go shorter for less money. I just like the way they look on the bike, but that's something I recommend. Is first for fitment purposes, and then for me to help reduce pedal strikes on the bike that already rides fairly low. The Industry 9 rear hub. The Industry 9 rear hub is almost instant engagement. So when I do climbs or I'll coast onto something, that little bit of play is gone versus the cheapy Specialized hub that came on. It was like some no-name rear hub. The engagement in this is practically instant. As soon as you touch the pedal, your foot don't rock back and forth. So as soon as I'm going up a climb or I need to power up something, I'm already putting the power down. So again, I can't rave about the build enough. Sure, it's expensive, but for what I do, it's worth it. Do you need to do this? No. But in a nutshell, that's my build. I know a ton of people ask questions about why I did it the way I did it. Why is the bike so pricey on an aluminum frame? I basically took a budget bike and made an S-works out of it. I understand that, but again, when it came to the carbon fiber, I didn't trust the flex stays in the back, especially taking big hits. I went with this. I have multiple bikes with the horse link. I have a ton of Specialized bikes, older bikes. They have the horse link, and I never had any issues with them. It just tracks well. So for me, it just works. So let's take it out for a ride.